Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and as always I'm joined by Sam Proof. Today on the show we're going to be talking about getting started in OBS Studio for beginners. So OBS Studio it's a great piece of software, but it has a bit of an unfortunate reputation for being a little bit challenging. And we kind of want to dispel some myths and sort of get you started simply today. So that's coming up on today's show. We are going out live to all the various places, so let us know where you're watching from. And as I'm inclined to want to do, tell us if you're watching live or watching the replay later on with those hashtags, hashtag Team Live or hashtag Team Replay. Sam, I don't know why I keep asking this question because I feel like the answer is the same every single week, but today has been crazy busy. But how are you generally?
I'm good. No, it's been a different kind of crazy. So first 2 weeks ago, I was coming back from the hotel when we had been kicked out to have renovations happen inside the house. Then the past few days, they tore off and redid the roofs on both the garage and the house. So I'm still picking up screws and pieces of shingle from everywhere. And I'm like, I think I've got everything back in place. Hopefully there's not a major amount of asphalt in my computer now. No, I everything's going in. And then to top things off, cats are now just finding us. The girls ran inside yesterday and were like, there's a kitten in the backyard. And so there is literally a foster cat right over there. He's doing very good and apparently is very quiet, thankfully. Hopefully he stays that way. But yeah, this morning I took him to the clinic to get neutered, which didn't end up actually happening. So that was a wasted waking up at 6:30 a.m. for no reason. How's things with you?
I don't feel like there's nearly as much happening in my world as there is in yours, although it is always encouraging to know that the cat distribution system is out in force. But yeah, it's been really crazy and really hectic. And I was saying to Sam before we started, it's one of those things that my body clock is very sensitive and I feel like I'm just getting into the swing of things, and Australia's going to do some daylight saving stuff tomorrow actually. So
Awesome.
it's all going to be incredibly short-lived, but never mind. Let's check in with the chat before we continue. So hello to, speaking of cats, hello to Team Tired, Team Cat, and Team Live, Saeed from Germany, the facilitator, who will be joining us on the show next week, actually. Hello to Raindrops and Ripples. Hello to CX3 Productions as well. And Mark Will 444. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. We are talking about OBS. We're talking about OBS in terms of, how to get started for beginners, because kind of like I alluded to earlier, it can be a little bit daunting at times for a lot of people. So and I guess my big thing is, and I keep using this somewhat mixed metaphor, that it's both a pocket knife in the sense that it's incredibly useful, but it's also a bit of a rocket ship in the sense that it can do just about anything. Yeah. So we don't want you to be overwhelmed by all the options you have available to you, because there's a really good chance you won't need most of them. We just want you to have this as an option in your content creation toolbox. So I guess, Sam, do you want to maybe start by telling us, what is OBS? Why might we want to use it?
So OBS, which stands for Open Broadcast Software, is in fact a free open source software for broadcasting and more, really. It is a great piece of video broadcasting software that will let you live stream, let you record, and if you're really if you're innovative, you could do a lot of other things with it too that it's not exactly set out to do. I'm a little off today. I'm a little tired. But yeah, it's a great piece of free live streaming software. It is pretty much the de facto streaming software for the past 15 years for solo creators, not necessarily, big companies and networks and stuff like that, but some of them are coming around on it. But yeah, it like John said, can do everything and anything you can imagine broadcast software doing. Like you can make it happen.
Absolutely. And I guess the place that you want to go to get this software is obsproject.com. I guess the other things I would say about OBS generally, it is cross-platform. You can use it on a Mac, Windows, or Linux. It is literally free and open source, so it's not going to cost you any money. And in a lot of ways, you know, I know there are lots of people out there sort of talking about the benefits of different pieces of software because they're getting a kickback or, you know,
Yeah.
an affiliate link. We just talk about this because we love it and we find it incredibly useful. So I just wanted to mention that up front. But I guess the other thing too, and I gotta be really, really honest with you guys. It's a bit mad everything that's happening right now, but let me see if I can just share this with you for a second. So this is obsproject.com.
Yep.
If you want to actually download this software, all you really need to do is on the front page here is select your operating system. This will actually download an installer. You can run that installer. It's all pretty straightforward. All you need to do is sort of go in and follow the options, let it know where on the computer it wants you to install, and you will have this software installed there. I just want to talk a little bit, I think, and again, if you've got questions in the chat, please let us know, because we're so happy to entertain those. But I guess, Sam, in the Facebook groups of late, we've been seeing a lot of people, a lot of newbies, and like there's no shame in this, but I just want to acknowledge it and talk about it. A lot of people that are getting a little bit confused by the interface. So, actually, before we do that, and again, I'm making so much of this up on the fly. I do want to share another window with you really quickly, but yeah, if you want to speak to that for a second while I'm plodding along in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to take in mind with OBS is sort of the different lingo, the different glossary of things. So we'll talk about scenes and sources and docs and scene collections and profiles and all of those sort of things. And we'll try and give some information on that. I don't know how much time you need here, John. But I think when John said, you know, it's multi-platform for Mac, Windows, and Linux, but also almost any site that you could want to stream to, it is possible to stream to with OBS, and they have different methods of streaming. Some of those are built-in presets for things like Twitch and YouTube, and they have like literally like 30 or 40 built-in presets. But as long as you're going to a streaming site that offers a custom RTMP and I believe a custom SRT at this point, you can stream to that site. Which does now include, to some extent, Instagram. It's not as easy as all the other things. And TikTok, you can do it, but not directly. And we'll probably, we've talked about that on other episodes.
We definitely have. And again, in a lot of ways, our dynamic is that I'm forever trying to make stuff simple, and Sam's just inherently nerdy, so he'll want to take it to a slightly more complicated place, which is fine. I'm just going to share this screen if I can. So basically, and annoyingly, the one part of this screen I want to show you doesn't actually appear to be showing up here. So, all right, let's not even worry about that for the moment. We'll come back to that in a second. But basically, once you install the software, it actually has an auto configuration wizard these days.
Yes.
And it didn't used to have this. This is a relatively new feature. But it gives you these options to optimize for streaming, recording is secondary. Optimize just for recording, I will not be streaming. Or thirdly, I will only be using the virtual camera. I don't even think we've spoken about the virtual camera yet, but we'll get to that. You can follow these settings through. I guess the thing I would tell you is not to worry about this too much. Yeah, so Michelle J. Raymond in the chat is asking about that specifically. I personally wouldn't even lose too much sleep over these settings. If you wanted to choose a particular one, I guess the streaming will sort of prompt you to connect to an account for streaming, and we'll talk about those settings a little bit later on. But I'm almost just happy to cancel out of that and go from there. So you can kind of do whatever you want to do in terms of that.
Yeah, and nothing's set in stone. You can always go back and change the settings.
Yes, you certainly can.
You can go back and create a second profile and have new settings.
Absolutely true. So let's just take a step back again, because I feel like we're a little all over the place today. So forgive us, indulge us, please. So, you know, we talk about streaming. I think most of us understand what that is. You're going out live to a particular destination, and that could be YouTube or LinkedIn Live or Instagram or wherever. We've got local recording, which is you making a video on your computer, and you can either just sort of do that in one hit and share that however you like, or you can sort of use that as a source in some video editing software. But the third one is, in a lot of ways, my favorite feature. And it's the application I see the most benefit for people that aren't in the sort of the game streaming world, business professionals, that kind of thing, is just the use of the virtual camera.
Yep.
And I think that's really cool. So basically what that does, it lets you control how you look on any application that supports web camera, whether that's Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meets, even things like StreamYard and Restream Studio, programs like that. It's a really great way of sort of changing how you appear. You can see even just on my screen, I'm in front of a green screen 24/7, so I've got to do something to make that go away. And I've also got some branding elements that I bring on the screen as well. So even if that's the only thing OBS does for you, it's amazing and it's literally free. So I just want to keep that in mind, or encourage you to keep that in mind. Hello to Walter Strong III from the Huddle, who's saying good evening, and Michelle J. Raymond. I'm happy to let's talk about this. I know you're very comfortable with what you're doing right now, and I don't really want to take you out of that StreamYard world because I think it works really well for what you're doing. But I would love to maybe have a chat about that later and just show you some really cool stuff that you can personally do just to make your presence on webcam more memorable in some ways, and to have things like the QR codes or the book artwork or the URL to the website or some titles actually just pop up onto your screen relatively easily. Okay, so Sam, I feel like there's something else I'm probably forgetting. Let me just consult the notes really, really quickly.
We kind of glossed over the interface and that whole spot.
Yes. In fact,
So,
let's
bring it up and we can.
Sure, that sounds great. Okay, let's do that then. All right, so let's add this back to our stage.
Sure.
So I guess the first thing to notice is this is a bit of a black box. So don't be scared by this. It's much more daunting at first glance than it appears. But what I want to show you in some ways is that we have a whole bunch of menus which have different options. For the most part, the file setting ones is a good place to be. You've got the edit menu, you've got the view. So you can sort of adjust all these various parts of the screen in all kinds of different ways. So, you know, that's one of the things that I sort of alluded to, that a lot of people on the Facebook groups were closing their docs and not being able to find things again. So if we look at the bottom of this screen here, you'll see we've got scenes, we've got sources. We'll talk about what those are in more detail in the next segment. We've got an audio mixer, got some scene transitions and controls. So the thing about this is I can sort of click and I can, and again, StreamYard isn't going to show me that the minute I detach it.
Right, because it's a window, not a display. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll fix that for the next segment. But essentially, if you do accidentally make any of these things go away, the best thing to do is to come up to your docs menu. And again, that's not showing either. How about we take a short break and we'll come back in the next segment and we'll talk about the docs in a little bit more detail, because I really want to do this properly. So, you know, forgive us. We've been having some technical issues, maybe not enough coffee this morning. We're going to come back and talk about scenes and sources, and I'll share this properly. So we'll be back with you in just a moment.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. Mm-hmm. So when Johan would get on my counter before, you know, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I'd talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And if you are like Saeed and part of Team Cats, then you definitely want to go over and check out cuteavalanche.com and that particular podcast, Just Kidding Around, which is Sam's podcast. Plenty of great cat content there as well. And even if you don't own a cat, it's a great opportunity to go out and nerd out with those cute little kittens. Okay, this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking about getting started with OBS and hopefully doing that relatively simply. I've made some adjustments here, so let's just try this again. Did you want to say something, Sam?
No, go ahead.
No? Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, so hopefully I'm sharing this properly. So I guess first of all, like we spoke about this being a bit of a black box. If you don't like the dark mode, if you go into the file option and go to the settings, we do actually have a whole bunch of different themes here. So if you'd prefer something different, you can sort of click on these and you'll see the colors changing. Some of these I think are nicer on the eyes than others. There's also a light version if you're into that. I know a lot of people aren't, but you can go through, you can just choose one that you like the look of. So that's the default. I might just leave it on the default. I think that looks pretty good, actually. So we're going to go okay. But what I was kind of alluding to before the break was that people often lose their docks. That sounds like such a euphemism when I say it out loud like that. But anyway, what I'm going to do is, and if you find that you've really messed this up, you can always go to View and just go to Reset UI, and that'll bring things back to the defaults. And especially if you're beginning, if you're following along with a tutorial, it's often a really good way of working in that way. So, this down here, we've got our scenes and our sources. We'll talk about them in more detail, but often in the Facebook groups, we've been seeing a lot of people sort of lose the ability to work with these sources. So often they might have accidentally hidden that dialog box. And if they want to bring it back, they can just go to Docs and click on Sources and bring it back. And you can actually sort of drag and drop these into different places if you want them to be part of the window, or if you want them to sort of be their own separate thing outside of that works as well.
Yeah, and they can, so in the top center there, you have that big black vertical box, which normally when it comes in, it's actually going to be a landscape by default. But that is your program window. So whatever happens in there is what you're going to be streaming or recording or using your virtual camera to, unless you change the settings. You can enable studio mode, if you wouldn't mind doing that, which would then show you a second window that right now looks identical, but this will actually be the preview of the scene that you can then switch to or transition to or whatever. So you can have your program feed be going out, and if you need to tinker with something live, you can have the preview there, or just if that's the workflow you want, where you have something ready and then you make your transition, just so that you have the peace of mind of like, I know I want to go to this close-up shot of whatever it is, so you have that ability as well. And then just to reiterate, because in case anyone got lost, those things at the bottom, those are the docks. So scenes, sources, audio mixer, transitions, and controls. There are potentially other docks that you can eventually put into your software via plugins. I don't know if there's any other default ones, but I think that's pretty much it.
There's also stats, apparently. Which,
stats, that's right.
I've actually never even looked at. But there you go. You can actually bring that up. That'll give you some information about how your computer's going along, the disk space that's available, CPU usage, etc. So I might close that one for the moment. You'll see that it actually said you just closed a dockable window. If you'd like to show it again, use the Docs menu on the menu bar. Often people will click this Do Not Show Again and click OK and then completely forget that that's how that works. But I'll close that at the moment. I think that's just one thing I do want to sort of mention, though, Sam, is this is literally a new portable installation I did minutes before the show, and it actually defaulted to vertical itself. So
that is interesting.
Let's just go, and I don't know if that's sort of a push for the TikTok Reels market, but let's maybe just change this in here.
Yeah.
And you might even need to walk me through these settings. Okay. It's been a while since I've done this. Okay. So if I change, what I've done is gone to File, Settings, and then go to Video. And I'm just changing the base canvas resolution to 1920 by 1080, which is sort of more of that traditional YouTube horizontal screen we're used to seeing. So from here, I can sort of go in and work with my different things. Sam, can you maybe just touch on scene collections and scenes briefly?
Yeah, so you have three things that we should distinguish, which are scene collections, scenes, and sources. Sources are the individual elements, so a video camera, a JPEG, text, a background color, any individual thing. A scene is a collection of all of those sources, which is probably a bad way of saying that because the next thing I'm going to talk about is a scene collection. So a scene is multiple sources that are put together to make one layout. So if you're visually watching us live right now, we have 2 different cameras and a background, and that background looks like it's also text and stuff, but it's actually just one image for the sake of StreamYard. But in OBS, if I were to do something similar to this, I could have 4 separate font text fields and stuff like that. So multiple sources make this one scene. And then if I'm doing a bunch of different shows, I might have different scene collections, 1 scene collection per show. That scene collection is literally a collection of scenes. So I might have 5 or 6 scenes that are things like host and guest, close-up host, close-up guest, starting soon screen, thank you for watching screen, be right back screen, something like that. Those are all individual scenes potentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess like in terms of the scene collection, like I have different scene collections for different shows, for different, like even when I just want to experiment with new things, and because I think in some ways, if you are doing a stream, if you're doing a recording, you kind of want to set things up in a particular way before you get started. So if you do want to experiment with things, you can always just go in and sort of bring in another scene collection. So again, I'm actually using OBS to show you my camera via the virtual camera. So this is a brand new installation. I don't have a lot going on here, but essentially from here we can come in here and like it's not uncommon for me to have a scene collection here called Day Job, which is literally what it sounds like. So I'll have some branding from my job, and then I might come in here and have another one that's VLS for the video and live streaming show, and I can sort of go between these. So if I just to give you a sense of how this actually works, so I'm in the VLS one, so I'm going to add some text, and we'll call this VLS text. It's always a good idea to give your sources names, and meaningful names, so you know what they are later on. So I can go video and live streaming show. Again, this is not going to be particularly exciting, but I just want to give you some sort of visual indication of these scene collections being different. So I could probably even just bring in a color source as well. And that's actually just a block of color, and you can sort of change how large or how small that is as well. So now, I've got my video and live streaming show. Maybe it's, Monday, 9 a.m. and I've got to go back to my day job. I can just click on here and go back to that particular scene collection. So that's really, really useful. And it's one of those things I kind of encourage you to create a new scene collection when you do want to play with something, if you do want to experiment a little bit.
Or duplicate one that you have. Chat. While you're doing that, I do want to point out that there is also profile. And often you will pair that profile with 1 or more scene collections. The profile is going to basically remember all of your settings. So it's sort of the underground. It doesn't remember, it's not related to scene collection scenes or any of that stuff. It is related to the account, the broadcast quality, and those sort of settings.
Yeah, and I must admit, I never ever use profiles for anything.
Sure.
So I always have the standard profile, and I just think in scene collections. So unless you have a really compelling reason to do that, and again for beginners, I'd encourage you to just stick with one.
If you're doing streams to different places, that is when you would most likely want a separate profile, because you don't want to have to enter in your Twitch handle every, like stream information, and then you're switching over to YouTube and you're changing it. So that would be an instance where you would want separate profiles.
Sure. Just checking with the chat. So Saeed is saying, I like to compare it with PowerPoint, with that's elements, good. Slides, and presentations.
Yeah, I think that's really solid.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And Saeed says, I've been using the virtual camera for years, but I've only used it for actual streaming a few times. So I think that's fair. And I think, honestly, for the people that I try to talk to, like, I'm like, I don't even worry about streaming necessarily. Like, if you can just change how you show up in a video call to look a little bit more presentable, and just have some branding incorporated, that in itself is kind of amazing. So, the thing that I like to tell people is just start simply. You don't need to change anything you're currently doing, but just think about how you might include some OBS stuff in your content creation toolbox. And it's something I read about during the week in the Learn live streaming newsletter. Is just I see a lot of people that once they get a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I don't think OBS is the tool for every situation. I think there are certain things it does really well and other things that might be better served elsewhere. So I don't really want to brainwash you into thinking that, but just keep in mind that those are sort of options that you have in terms of whatever content creation you're trying to do. Okay, so no worries. Let's just. I'm just going to go back to this, and we might make it full screen again. So obviously, down the bottom here, we've got the scenes and we've got the sources. So a scene, in a lot of ways, and it's a good idea to actually right-click and rename these as well, which is F2 on the keyboard shortcut on Windows at least. And I'd say Start Screen. And we can come down here, we can add additional scenes by clicking on this plus sign. And again, give that a meaningful name. And you basically bring all your sources that you want on a particular scene into this section. So let's talk about the sources themselves. I might just rattle them off, and then maybe Sam, if you want to speak to the ones that you think are useful.
Sure.
We've got the application audio capture, which is technically in beta. We've got audio input capture, audio output capture, browser, color source, display capture, game capture, image slideshow, media source, scene, text, video capture device, and window capture. So that's a lot of stuff, and I'm curious, Sam, like which ones are you actually using on a regular basis?
I mean, I think for anyone out there, whether you're streaming or just using it for Zoom or to record, the things you're really looking for, first and foremost, probably video. Most likely you want to be on that and have your webcam that's facing you show up. There's a good chance you need to bring the audio in. If you are doing it as a stream or recording, that's definitively going to be something you need. If you're using it for Zoom, maybe not. So audio input. There's a very good chance you would want to use an image and or a text. And I think those four things is enough for the basic person. Like that's enough to get started. If you are specifically looking to do game streaming, you're either going to want to look at game capture or display or window capture, unless you're bringing your game in as through a capture card, in which case it's just going to be a video source at that point. But yeah, that's pretty much it to start. And then, you can find those limitations and be like, well, I want to do a playlist of video clips and then come back to us and I'll be like, here's how you do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so and in a lot of ways, and I sort of sent out some links during the week about using the virtual camera. And the thing that I encourage beginners to do is just to create a single scene, add their camera, maybe add a background if you're working with a green screen. A lot of people probably aren't, so you don't need to worry about that. Then think about some text and some images and just how you can sort of toggle those things on and off when it makes sense to do so. So again, I want to keep it as simple as possible, but let's take a break and we'll come back and talk about media specifically. This is the video and live streaming show, and I'm going to click one of these magical buttons. Which one am I going to click? I think I'm going to click this one.
Hi, I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator.
And that's a promo for Build a Presentation Muscle, my podcast, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. We like to talk about the technical nerdy stuff here, but I kind of feel like it's important to think about what you're actually talking about and how you're communicating as well. So that's kind of my outlet for doing that. So you can definitely check that out. But this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about OBS Studio and getting started for beginners. So obviously, there's a lot of stuff that this software can do. We don't really want to overwhelm you with all the options. We really want to keep this quite basic for today. But if you do have any questions or comments, leave them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I might even just check in briefly with the chat before we continue. And again, It's going to be so weird next week when Saeed is actually on the show because he's our most active commenter. So there might be no chat comments next week. We'll just have to see how that plays out. Once you have a nice scene collection for the virtual camera, it's only a few steps to stream the same thing. That's absolutely true.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that more in the next segment. And hello to Chocolate Quilts, who's going to catch us on the replay as well. So, okay, so let's talk about the multimedia aspect of this, Sam. And I guess, you know, the kind of things that we're looking to actually incorporate here potentially are your camera, your audio,
Right.
and maybe some other audio or videos that you want to incorporate into a scene. I do this thing where I bring in a Logitech web camera to demonstrate this part of it, but it has a weird habit of changing my audio settings, so I didn't want to risk it this week.
Okay.
But I guess we can talk conceptually about what this looks like. So if we go over to the webcam section here, and I'll probably talk incessantly, Sam, so just jump in whenever you want.
Okay.
Essentially, if we go down to the plus sign, we have a whole bunch of options to add our source here. And the one we really want here is called video capture device.
Yeah.
So if I click on this one, I can create a new video capture device, give it a meaningful name because you will want to know what it is later on. I might just call this webcam. We can click OK. It's already in use because that's what I named the scene. So again, your names do need to be slightly unique. So we'll go Logitech webcam. I literally don't have this connected. So we're going to pretend a little bit, but essentially what you would do is find your camera from this list. At the moment, I've only got the cam link, which I'm using for my main camera, but I do have the OBS virtual camera. So I could show you this in context as well. So
there you go.
It's sort of the same version of me there again. We can sort of come in here and change the resolution type if we need to. For the most part, you probably won't, but I do know that my Logitech web camera has a weird habit of not defaulting to the right thing. I click on custom. I literally type in the number. If I go 19. Oh, maybe it's not going to let me do that today. It's the joy of a live demo. But normally I'd do 1920 by 1080 for that particular web camera, but let's not even worry about it too much. But if you do want to go in and tweak these settings, you have the ability to do that if they're supported by your web camera. If you do need to flip the orientation, you can potentially do that as well. I'm actually just going to come back and I'm just going to turn off these custom settings and just go with the device default. But the thing that I'm always of two minds about this, Sam. We do have this option to capture the audio with the camera, or we do have it separately. Do you want to talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, most webcams, not like your DSLRs, although some now, but most webcams have a built-in microphone, which your PC or computer is going to pick up as an audio source, and it'll be sort of tied to that video layer, that video source. So if you don't have a solo mic scenario, like John and I have our own mics that are going in as their own audio input, and you need to use that audio source from the camera, then that's there and you can use it. In general, if you do have a mic that you're using, you want to make sure that that's turned off, the camera having its own mic, because you don't want any kind of like additional sound or echo happening, or God forbid, some kind of weird delay, like where you're, which I guess that is what an echo is in a sense. But yeah, if you are using your webcam's mic as your only sound input, you also have the option of turning it into an OBS audio layer. What do they call that? What's the mark on that?
An audio input source.
Audio, yeah, it becomes like an audio input source. It's the very last thing on that video capture, and you'll just toggle that on or check that, and it'll show up in your audio mixer. Otherwise, it won't show up in the same way.
Okay, sure. And I guess, like, I told you earlier that I am so wary of using my Logitech web camera because it does have a built-in microphone and it has a weird habit of changing default settings on my Windows computer. I'm very interested in actually exploring the Elgato web cameras because they made a conscious decision not to have any microphones built into those. So I think that's really good. And I think if you're just starting and you literally only have a webcam, by all means, try that audio, see how it works. It's probably not going to be great quality audio. It's probably going to be too far away from your mouth to capture it well.
Right.
But you can certainly try that and see how it goes and upgrade
I
it
mean,
on potentially if you want to.
Yeah, it's going to be better than nothing. Like, it's not going to be terrible, but it won't be great. You definitely want to upgrade your audio as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Okay, so if we go back to OBS over here, and again, I should say, like, this is not the greatest demonstration of this, but I'm just going to talk to you conceptually about this. So if you come down here, capture audio only is basically just saying whatever's coming out of this particular camera, grab it. But if I want to actually get a custom audio device, I can click that little checkbox, and then I can sort of come in here and say, hey, get the audio from my Procaster, my Rodecaster, or some other option potentially here as well, and have that in there separately. So the thing about this, and it gets a little bit tricky because there could be a time where you don't want to be in the scene, but you want your voice to be heard. And you kind of have an option to sort of, put yourself underneath something else within that scene. So if you've got an overlay or something, you just move yourself further down the layers. But otherwise, I am a big fan of actually bringing the audio in separately. So I might turn that off. I'll leave that as default. Because this is kind of a virtual camera, like it's not going to give me any audio whatsoever. So in this case, it's a fairly moot point. But that essentially is how we can do that.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess the next thing is the audio aspect, and the audio is a little bit. Well, I don't want to say it's tricky, but I think it's something you do need to be a little bit mindful of. So if you weren't bringing in your audio as part of your web camera, so, and again, like maybe I should just go back in here and just show you. In fact, I've added that twice, so I'm going to remove that one. So if you double click on a source, it'll bring up the properties. You can also right click and go to properties as well. So if I tell this basically to capture my custom audio, and it'll just get my Rodecaster, which is a good option. There we go. You can actually see in the audio mixer those levels are there. That potentially is great, but if you do sort of want to only grab like if you want to separate the video and the audio because you want to use them in different ways, rather than sort of having that included, I can just go back to the default audio and I can show you how to bring that in separately. So let's turn that off for the moment. You'll see the audio is gone because this camera doesn't actually have an audio source. But if I go to my sources and I go to add audio input capture, and again, this could just be a single microphone. It could be an entire soundboard, which is essentially what I'm working with the Rodecaster. But all I want to do is come in and grab my audio device and click OK. And now, when I talk, you'll see that this audio device is down here. The trick about this is that you will need to go in and add this to any scene that you want to add it to. It won't automatically always be there. And in some ways that requires a little bit of thought and a bit of planning. So if I go back to my start screen, you'll see in the audio mixer, there is no audio. But if I wanted to add it, I can go to the plus sign. I can go to audio input capture. And then instead of creating a new one, I can come down to add existing, and then I can grab that and put that in there.
Yeah, a quick side note.
Yep.
About that audio mixer, if you right click on it, you can turn it from that horizontal layout to a vertical layout and vice versa.
You can.
So if you have several audio sources and you want to be able to see more at one time, you might choose one over the other.
And I guess the other thing with the audio settings is, obviously you can see we've got a volume here. If I click on these three dots and go to advanced audio properties, I have a lot of options here. So the first one, and I in some ways, I think the most important one is if you find that your audio is sort of spiking into the red quite a lot, you kind of want to bring that down. You can sort of do this by adjusting this, and as I bring this down, you'll see that the fader is actually being dragged down. I can also put in numbers. And I know, for example, that my normalized videos are sort of minus 6 dB, for example, or you can actually click on this percentage and just describe it in a percent as well. So It's one of those weird things that as an audio engineer, I love my decibels, but I know a lot of people prefer the percentage, but you do actually have that option there. The other thing that's really important over here is the audio monitoring options. So we've got monitor off, which means it'll go to your stream or your recording, but you won't hear it, which is probably the option you want for your own microphone audio. You don't want to be hearing yourself back all the time. That'd be really annoying. You've got monitor only, which means you'll hear it, but your audience won't hear it. And that can be quite useful for sort of chat dings and things that you want to be made aware of, but maybe the audience doesn't need to hear. And finally, you have monitor and output. So if I was playing a video, I want to make sure that I can hear that as well as the audience. So we've got that there. Finally, we do have tracks. You can do multi-track audio. For beginners, I recommend you don't even worry about that. Just make sure all of these are checked.
Yeah.
That's what I would say about that. So
totally. Yeah, I wouldn't have even mentioned it. No, just make sure all of those are checked and leave it at that.
Yes. It's one of those things that it is possible to get quite nerdy and technical, but for beginners, let's not even worry about that.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing too, and I feel like we haven't allowed enough time for this entire show because there are so many things we can tackle.
I honestly think we could do this entire show just talking about sources and
only
get through half of them.
Yeah, I think we've done an entire show on that before, but
sure.
I guess finally, I just want to mention you can actually come in here and add media. So if you do have a video that you want to play, if you do have some music you want to play in the background, this is sort of the way to do it. And again, there are a whole bunch of options, and we probably will need to do a tutorial on that in the future. But we're going to keep going because we are running a little bit low on time. But I do want to say hi to Shrey, who's joining us over on LinkedIn. And Saeed is just saying that window capture now also includes audio capture since the last update. That's very convenient. That's good to know. I wasn't aware of that. I'm a little wary, actually, of upgrading. And normally I'm not, but I've just heard a few horror stories, so I'm holding off for a little bit until they work out all the bugs.
Yeah, I think I have the latest version. There is also a solo application audio input, which is the same thing without the window capture, which is what I actually use to record a vertical version of our show, so I can hear John in that recording.
And it's funny, I really like that audio application capture, and I'm not a great musician, but I do have a MIDI keyboard beside me, and I do like to dabble from time to time. And I will sort of set that up to capture the virtual instruments and play some music when the mood strikes me. But we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the actual output of all of this, like the recording, the streaming, and the virtual camera in just a moment. I need to click on another button. Which one do I click on? I think it is this one here.
If you've been watching us for a while, or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv.
And if you do need help with those live production services, certainly get in touch with Sam. He can definitely help you with that. This is the Video and Live Streaming Show. Today we're talking all about OBS Studio for beginners. We are kind of only just scratching the surface in some ways, but we want to get you started relatively quickly. And I do have a whole bunch of other resources. But if you've got questions, let us know. We'll certainly circle back to those when we have the opportunity. So I guess we started out by talking about the three things that this software can do, which is record local video, stream, and use the virtual camera to change how you show up in different places wherever a webcam is supported. Talk to me, and I must admit, Sam, I've never sort of gone, well, I say never. I very rarely go live out of OBS to a destination. I've often gone via Restream in the past. But talk to us about what we need to know in terms of actual streaming.
So before you start streaming, you're going to connect whatever platform you want to stream to, or service like Restream that'll multicast to different platforms. You can actually multicast through OBS with a plugin. I'm not going to get into that. But assuming you just want to go to a solo destination like Twitch or YouTube or LinkedIn, most of those are just available right away from the settings, and you just link your account. So you'll go into settings, and you'll open your output, and go to that first streaming tab, and that'll give you. No, is this what I wanted actually? Actually, I guess it's the
stream. There we go.
Yeah, it is the stream one, and that'll let you select the service, which they have a few right away. But if you hit show all, it's going to be like 30 or 40 even. It's like a big list. A lot of them are church-based ones, and some of them I don't think exist anymore. But anything,
and some of them are very inappropriate for.
Yeah, there's some inappropriate ones on there too. But any of the main platforms you want that aren't Instagram or TikTok are going to be in here. So Twitter and Twitch and YouTube, and is LinkedIn on that list? I don't know. And then it'll prompt you to either just connect to your account through like an OAuth kind of opt-in, or you may have to put in your stream key, which you'll have to find on whichever platform you're trying to get it from. But once you've connected your account, then you go over to like your output to make sure you've got whatever settings you want. For the most part, the key thing to look for here is really down in the encoder settings. You just want to make sure that keyframe interval is set to. Oh, well, you're on simple, right?
Yeah, I'm on simple. So again, for our beginners, I'd probably encourage you just to stay there. But if you did want to go to advanced,
probably just leave it. But if for some reason you're having issues, switch it to advanced. And most likely the issue is that OBS defaults this keyframe interval that is inside the second block encoder settings to 0, when it most of the time needs to be 2 for streaming. For recording, doesn't matter. Everything else you could pretty much leave or just do some research. But to get started, those are the big points that you need to know. And then you start streaming. You just hit that start streaming button and you go for it. If you do connect to something like a Twitch or a YouTube, when you first connect, it is going to pop up some new custom docs that are related to those platforms. So it'll pop up like a chat doc that it'll float like this settings thing is floating, and you can just drop that in place wherever you want it. Twitch will have like 1 or 2 others that either pop up or become optional as well, which are like, I think Twitch has its own stats, and there's like some other functionality that you can do. And I don't think we've said this prior, but once you've put those docs in place, they don't move unless you accidentally move them. So like that's all set for you. It's linked to your profile. So the next time you open OBS, all your docs are going to be in the same place. All those scenes and sources will still be there. You don't have to redo that 15 minutes of setup every single time. It's done. This is just an extended sort of look at things.
Absolutely.
But yeah, then you're streaming.
Yeah, and like in some ways it can be that simple. And again, I guess the reason historically I like to use a service like Restream is just because it takes a bit of the pressure off my internet connection. And again, I compared notes with a Canadian this week who had like 100 times better internet than me, and I could just die of jealousy. But essentially the idea is, you send it to Restream, it sends it off to other places. So if you've got a whole bunch of destinations, and I think the thing Sam always tells me is that also takes some of the pressure off the CPU of your computer as well, which is quite useful.
There's one other thing I would say along those lines is the benefit of using there's a pro and a con here. So the benefit of using something like StreamYard or Restream to multicast to things, of course, what John said, but also if you do crash, it gives you sort of a window where the stream will still be live and you haven't lost that stream, because like on certain platforms, mostly like YouTube, and I don't know how LinkedIn works with this, but I assume LinkedIn, if you stop streaming, it ends the session and you lose all those viewers. If you're doing it through like a StreamYard and my OBS crashes, I've got, 5 to 10 minutes, depends on the platform, where I can try to hustle, get that, software back up, start streaming again. And my stream is still up on YouTube. And I speak from experience because that has happened. So, whereas if I was just doing it through OBS and for some reason it crashed, and it's usually because I have hundreds and hundreds of sources and dozens of scenes, and yeah, things happen. If it crashed, it would just be down and I would lose all those, viewers for that session and have to restart it, or just be like, yeah, screw it, I'm doing it next week. The con to using like a Restream or StreamYard is you do now add some latency to the real time of me saying things to my user or viewer, hearing it and then responding to it. So depending on how good my connection is, how good your connection is, how good the connection to StreamYard to the viewer and is, there may be some substantial latency there. And if that's important, then you want to go straight to the source.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Although in a lot of ways, even with my older internet connection, I was like, there was definitely a delay between me saying something and the service receiving it, but it was kind of a consistent delay. So it really it wasn't that big a deal in the scheme of things. So I guess if you were talking to somebody else live, that potentially could be an issue though. So just keep that in mind. I'm kind of trying to multitask, but I can't find the thing I wanted to share. So let's not worry about that too much. But let's go back to OBS specifically. So also in these settings for the output, so you go File Settings and the Output tab, we do have the recording options here. So first of all, you can specify where you want these videos to end up. And it's a good idea to make sure it's somewhere that's got a lot of disk space, because these things can be quite large. I accidentally left a recording going of one of our shows for like 10 hours, and I think it was like a 4 gigabyte file at the end. So you can do that. You can also you can sort of change the recording quality if you want. Again, I'm in the simple mode. I recommend beginners stay there. You can choose a different file format here as well. So what I should say here, and I'm really curious to hear Sam's take on this, but this MKV format, it's not. It's really interesting because if your computer does crash, there's a chance that you'll be able to retrieve some of your video in a way that just isn't true for MP4s. Do you think that's a fair statement?
That is the theory. I don't recall if I've ever successfully experienced that and had it come back, but that is the reason MKV is a superior format. Is if you crash, you'll at least get some, if not all, of the stream as a recording up to the point where it crashed. Whereas MP4, you're just going to lose that, whatever that file was. MKV is not readable by a lot of things. So you are most likely going to have to convert it, but OBS does build that into their system, so you can do that through the file menu.
You can. Yeah, so you go to File. There's actually a thing up here that shows you the folder that your recordings are in. It says Show Recordings, but you've got this Remux option. So basically what you do is you find an MKV file on your computer, and it just makes it into an MP4 version. It's really basic and really easy. It's an extra step sometimes, although, and I'm not really sure, like I know I've got this set up on my computer, possibly in the advanced settings. There's a setting in here. I'll have to find it and get back to you. But essentially, it'll automatically remux things for me at the end of my recordings.
Oh, nice.
But I guess, and we are sort of running out of time, so I'll have to speed this up a little bit. But basically, these controls are the bottom hand screen. Once you've got your settings going, you can start streaming, you can start recording, and you can start the virtual camera. The virtual camera we haven't really spoken about too much. But it basically lets you use the visuals out of OBS in any kind of software that supports a web camera. And essentially, all you need to do is hit that button to make it to start the virtual camera. Then you go into Zoom, you go into Google Meets, you just select the OBS virtual camera as your video source, and it just works really, really well.
Yeah, and we've
The
done
only
a deep dive on that virtual camera in a previous episode, so you can see all the functionality if we go back and link to it. But yeah, you can search for that.
And it's funny, I do have a screenshot of this somewhere, and I'm looking at my computer and I can't find it for the life of me, but never mind. It's a very simple thing, and again, that's the part where you can go off and actually just change how you appear, and you can have your logo. You could potentially come in and animate that. You could press a button to bring on your podcast artwork or your show artwork or the book you've written. You can have a QR code pop up on the screen. You can have text, whatever you want, whatever you need to sort of make it more engaging. There we go. Sam's got a little example there with his artwork. So I hope we haven't bamboozled you too much today. It's been a little bit freeform, but again, we just want you to think about this and don't rule it out, because I know there are lots of people that are like, no, it's just too hard, it's too scary. It really isn't. But that said, if you want us to help you along the journey, leave comments wherever you happen to be watching this. Don't forget that you can, like and subscribe in all the various places, which we would certainly appreciate. But Sam, I guess as we start to wrap up today, where can people go to learn more about you and watch your videos and your content and all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can head over to samproof.tv or scan this QR code. You'll see a site like this, and at the top left, that's all of my social platforms. So you can follow me on all of those or wherever you're most active, and ask me any questions about OBS. And if you didn't get enough cats this episode, head over to cuteavalanche.com for our 24/7 kitten cam, where we have two 9-day-old bottle babies right now whose eyes should be opening any day now. So keep an eye out for that. Pun intended. And there's another QR code, and you can scan that.
And if you want to catch up with anything I'm doing, head over to johnlacey.com. You'll see the podcast, lots of articles, and there are social links at the bottom of all those pages. So come find me. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and YouTube, but I dabble in a lot of different places. So I guess thank you for everybody's company today. Again, like and subscribe wherever you happen to be watching this. I don't always mention it, but we do go out to a lot of places live. So if you are watching there, we'd appreciate the love. Next week on the show, we're actually going to be talking to Saeed, the facilitator. He's going to join us live on the show. I haven't scheduled that one yet because I'm waiting for the daylight savings change to happen here tomorrow, but
yes,
that will certainly be available shortly. So we're really excited to look forward to that and hear about the way he makes facilitation a little bit more fun than it might otherwise be, and some of the tools and technologies, including OBS Studio, that I know that he uses. So
cool.
Have a great week. Again, I guess the other thing I probably should shamelessly promote, since we're here, if you want to learn more about OBS Studio generally, head over to johnlacey.com/OBS news. I've got a newsletter on LinkedIn, which includes videos and sort of text instructions that are step-by-step. If there's something in particular you want to know about OBS, let me know, and I will certainly endeavor to cover that in the future. You got anything to add, Sam? Before we wrap up?
No.
Sam's going to go and have a nap.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so tired today. But no, have a great one. Yeah, let us know if you have questions about OBS or any streaming things or video things for future episodes. We love the questions. All right, have a great weekend.
Great. Okay, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much for joining us.